The morning of my 70th birthday, I woke up before the alarm. Old habit. 43 years of rising at 5:30 to make breakfast before my husband left for work, and even now, 3 years after he passed, my body refused to forget. I lay there for a moment, staring at the ceiling, listening to the silence. Not the comfortable kind. The kind that has weight to it. The kind that presses down on your chest if you let it. I got up anyway. That's what you do. I had set the table the night before. Nothing extravagant. A white tablecloth I'd kept since our first apartment, the good china I only used on Sundays, and a small vase of yellow roses I'd cut from the backyard. My husband, Robert, had planted that rosebush the year our daughter was born, 38 years ago. It still bloomed every spring without being asked. I made coffee, scrambled eggs, and sat down alone at a table set for 5. My daughter, Sandra, lived 40 minutes away in Asheville. She'd called 3 weeks earlier to tell me she and her husband had already booked a cruise, the Caribbean. They'd gotten a deal, she said. These things don't come around twice, she said. I told her I understood, and I did understand. I just wished understanding didn't feel so much like swallowing glass. My son David was in Phoenix. He had 2 kids, a mortgage, and a personality that had grown progressively stranger since he married his second wife. He sent a text the morning of my birthday. It said, "Happy birthday, Mom. It's crazy week. We'll call soon." He did not call soon. He did not call at all. My other daughter, Patricia, the youngest, had promised to drive up from Columbia. She had promised in January. She had confirmed in March. The week before my birthday, she left a voicemail while I was in the garden. "Mom, I'm so sorry. Marcus got us tickets to the Garth Brooks concert. It's been rescheduled 3 times. We can't miss it again. You understand, right? You always understand." I stood in my kitchen at 5:47 in the morning, 70 years old, eating scrambled eggs off the good china, and I thought, yes, I always understand. That was the problem. I want to tell you something about the years before that morning because none of what happened later makes sense without them. Robert died in February, 3 years prior. Heart attack. Quick, the doctor said, as if that was a comfort. He was 69 years old. We had been married 47 years. I know people say things like that all the time, 47 years, and the number loses meaning. But let me tell you what 47 years actually looks like. It looks like learning how someone takes their coffee and then adjusting slightly every decade because people change and you pay attention. It looks like arguing about the thermostat for 4.5 decades and never once resolving it. It looks like sitting in a hospital waiting room while your husband has a procedure and realizing you have forgotten how to be a person without him in the room. We had built everything together. The house, the savings, the life. Robert had been careful with money in a way I sometimes resented and now desperately missed. He kept files, actual paper files, organized in a cabinet in the study, labeled in his careful handwriting. Insurance, taxes, investments, the will. After the funeral, once the casseroles stopped coming and the sympathy cards dried up, I sat with our family attorney, a gentleman named Mr. Pierce, and went through everything. Robert had left the house to me outright, a small investment account, the car, and a separate account, one I had not known about, that he had been quietly adding to for 11 years. Not a fortune, but enough. My children knew about the house and the car. They did not know about the account. I didn't tell them. I'm not entirely sure why. Partly because Robert had kept it separate and that felt intentional. Partly because something in me, some instinct I couldn't name yet, said, wait, watch. See who people are when they think the inheritance is ordinary. What I saw in the months after Robert died was this. My children grieved appropriately, attended the funeral dutifully, helped with paperwork promptly, and then resumed their lives completely. Phone calls became monthly, then occasional, then sporadic. Sandra stopped asking how I was sleeping. David stopped asking how I was eating. Patricia, who had always been the most affectionate of the three, stopped calling on Sundays the way she used to. I told myself it was normal. Grief is disorienting. People have their own lives. I did not want to be the kind of mother who kept score, but I am a woman who pays attention. And what I noticed, slowly, over 2 years, was a pattern. The calls increased around holidays when they wanted to know plans, who was hosting, whether I needed them to come. They increased around tax season. David twice asked to borrow money and twice paid it back without mentioning interest. They increased whenever something needed to be decided about the house. Should I sell? Downsize? Move closer to one of them? The house. They were always circling back to the house. It is a modest house. 3 bedrooms, a covered porch, the rose bush in the backyard. In this market, I'd been told it was worth more than Robert and I had ever imagined when we bought it in 1987. And I understood, intellectually, that my children were not villains. They were people who had grown up comfortable and learned to think of comfort as something owed to them. Robert and I had given them too much, too easily, for too long. That was our failure as much as theirs. But understanding something and being at peace with it are two entirely different things. The woman who changed everything was named Eloise. She moved in next door 11 months after Robert died. 74 years old, recently widowed herself. Originally from a small town in Georgia, she arrived with 2 suitcases, a box of books, and a cast iron skillet she carried personally off the moving truck, because, she told me, she didn't trust anyone else with it. I brought her a plate of lemon bars the first afternoon. She invited me in before I could turn around. We sat at her kitchen table for 3 hours, and I did not once check the time. Eloise had 3 adult children of her own, scattered across the country, and she had reached a point, she said it plainly, without bitterness, where she had stopped waiting to matter to them. She still loved them. She just no longer organized her life around hoping they would show up. There's a particular loneliness, she said to me that first afternoon, that comes from people who are supposed to love you most being the ones who see you least. I went home and cried for an hour. Not sad crying, the other kind. The kind where something finally has a name. Over the next 2 years, Eloise became the person I called when I couldn't sleep. She was the one who drove me to my cardiology appointment when my car was in the shop and I hadn't wanted to bother anyone. She was there the afternoon I found Robert's old reading glasses in the pocket of his winter coat and sat down on the floor of the closet because my legs simply stopped working. She brought soup. She sat with me. She did not say everything happens for a reason. When I turned 68, Eloise organized a small dinner, just the 2 of us, and a few women from our Tuesday morning walking group. We ate pasta and drank too much wine and laughed until my sides hurt. It was the first birthday in years that had not left me feeling quietly erased. My children sent cards. Sandra called for 4 minutes. David sent flowers, a prearranged delivery, the card printed, not handwritten. The night before my 70th birthday, I sat in the garden with a glass of sweet tea and thought about all of it. About Robert, who would have turned 72 that October and who would have made me a cake from scratch, badly, because he never could get the layers even. About the version of my old age I had imagined, grandchildren visiting, Sunday dinners, the house full of noise. About the version I had actually received. I thought about the account, the one they didn't know about, and I thought, I know what Robert would have wanted. Because I knew him for 47 years and I paid attention. The morning of my birthday, after the eggs and the coffee and the table set for 5, I called Mr. Pierce. I'd like to come in this week, I said. I've made a decision about the secondary account. Of course, he said. Should I prepare any specific paperwork? Yes, I said. I want to revise the beneficiary entirely. Sandra called that evening at 7:15. I could hear the shiv in the background. Some kind of announcement. Steel drums distantly playing. Happy birthday, Mom. I'm so sorry we couldn't be there. Did you do anything fun? Eloise took me to lunch, I said. We had a wonderful time. Oh, that's sweet. A pause. Is the house still? I mean, are you still thinking about what we talked about? About maybe listing it in the fall? There it was, right on schedule. I haven't decided anything yet, I said. Okay, no pressure. Just the market's still good, and David and Patricia and I were thinking that if you sold and maybe moved into one of those nice senior communities. Sandra, I said gently, let's talk about this another time. After we hung up, I sat in Robert's old armchair with the telephone in my lap. I was not angry. I want to be clear about that, because anger would have been simpler. I was something quieter than angry, something more like clear. I saw them. I finally just saw them clearly, without the film of hope I had been looking through for years. And seeing clearly, I could finally make a clear decision. David called 2 days later. He apologized for the birthday, said the week had been genuinely insane, that his younger kid had strep throat and his boss had been unreasonable, and he was sorry he hadn't called sooner. It was a real apology, the kind that contains enough detail to be plausible. And I accepted it genuinely, because I believe in grace. But I also noticed that at the end of the call, he mentioned casually, the way you mentioned something you've been holding for 20 minutes, that he and his wife had been looking at some investment properties, and if there was any flexibility in the estate planning, any liquidity coming down the road. I told him I'd think about it. Patricia came to see me in June. She drove up on a Saturday, brought flowers, and we sat on the porch for most of the afternoon. It was a genuinely good visit. Patricia's funny and warm and capable of more love than she currently gives herself permission to feel. We talked about her marriage, which was strained. We talked about her kids, who were teenagers and difficult. We talked about Robert, and she cried, and I held her hand. As she was leaving, standing by her car in the driveway, she said, "Mom, I just want you to know, whatever you decide to do with the house, I support you. I just hope you'll keep us involved." I kissed her cheek. I watched her drive away. I stood in the driveway for a moment, alone, and I listened to the birds and the distant sound of a lawnmower 2 streets over, and I thought, I have been waiting for one of them to come and ask nothing. To arrive without an agenda, to just sit with me in the garden and let the afternoon pass without turning it toward inheritance. Eloise had done that 400 times. I went inside and called Mr. Pierce to confirm the paperwork. I want to tell you about the day I signed the documents, because it felt significant in a way I hadn't expected. It was a Tuesday morning in late July. Eloise drove me, my choice, not necessity. I simply wanted the company. We sat in Mr. Pierce's office, which smelled of old paper and air conditioning, and he walked me through everything clearly and patiently, the way he always did. I had decided to leave the house to my estate as planned, to be divided among my children in equal thirds. That was Robert's wish, and it remained mine. I was not interested in punishment, but the account, Robert's quiet, careful account, built over 11 years, I was redirecting entirely, not to my children. To Eloise. Mr. Pierce looked at me carefully over his glasses. "You're certain?" "Completely," I said. Eloise had not known I was going to do this. I had not told her in advance because I did not want her to argue, and she would have argued. She was sitting in the chair beside me, and when Mr. Pierce said her name in connection with the revised document, she went very still. "Margaret," she said quietly. "Don't," I said. "Let me say it once and then we'll move on." I turned to her. "You were there every single time it mattered. You drove me to appointments and sat on my kitchen floor with me and made me laugh on nights I had forgotten how. Robert would have loved you, and he worked for 11 years to build something that he wanted to go somewhere. It would mean something. I think it means something here." Eloise pressed her lips together. She did not cry easily, a quality I had always admired, but her eyes were bright. "You are the most stubborn woman I have ever met," she said. 70 years of practice," I said. We signed the papers. Mr. Pierce witnessed everything. Eloise and I went to lunch afterward at the Italian place we liked, and we split a dessert we didn't need. And we talked for 2 hours about everything except what had just happened, Because that is the kind of friendship where some things don't need to be discussed once they're done. My children found out eventually, not from me directly. I had not planned to make an announcement. But David called in September asking about estate planning questions, and Mr. Pierce, with my permission, shared the relevant details. David called me that evening. He was not shouting. I want to be fair to him. He was controlled and hurt and confused, and that combination was, in some ways, harder to navigate than anger would have been. I don't understand, he said. She's your neighbor. We're your children. I know who you are, I said. Mom, that account. We didn't even know it existed. Dad kept it separate. Why would you? Because your father kept it separate for a reason, I said. He was careful and intentional, and I believe he knew, even if he never said so, that some things should be given where they are genuinely needed, where they have been genuinely earned. A long silence. Are you saying we haven't been there for you? I thought about the birthday table set for 5. The text that said we'll call soon. The voicemail about the concert. The conversations that always bent toward the house. I'm saying that Eloise has been here, I said, and I wanted her to have something real. That's all. Sandra called the next day and was more direct. Patricia called the day after that and was, to her credit, quiet for a long time before she spoke. I think I know why, she said finally. I don't like it, but I think I know why. That was the most honest any of them had been, and I told her so. The calls were awkward for a few months. The holidays were strained in the particular way that holidays are when something true has been said and not yet processed. I understood. I did not apologize. What I want to tell you, what I kept returning to in the months after, sitting in Robert's armchair in the evenings, is that the decision had not been about the money. Not really. The money was just the form the decision took. The decision itself was about something I should have made years earlier. The decision to see my life as it actually was, rather than as I had always hoped it would be. I'd spent decades pouring myself into people who accepted what I gave as a matter of course, the way you accept weather. It simply arrived. You didn't need to be grateful for it. It was just the climate. Eloise had never once taken me for granted. Not because she was a better person than my children. She wasn't, necessarily. She was just a different kind. She had earned her way to gratitude through her own mosses, her own long years of learning what mattered. She knew the cost of a Tuesday morning drive to a cardiology appointment because she had paid that cost herself for her own husband years ago. There is a particular kind of love that only people who have lost something can give each other. It is quieter than the love you feel for your children. It is less instinctive, less ferocious, but it is more deliberate. And deliberate love, I have come to believe, is the deepest kind. The rose bush in the backyard bloomed again that spring. I cut a dozen stems and brought them next door. Eloise put them in the window in the same yellow vase she'd had since her own first apartment, and the two of us sat on her porch in the late afternoon light and drank coffee and did not talk about anything important. Everything important had already been said. I am 70 years old. My husband is gone. My children love me in the way that people love things they have always had and never feared losing, imperfectly, at a distance, with good intentions and poor follow-through. I have made my peace with that, the way you make peace with weather. You don't stop wishing for sunshine. You just learn to bring an umbrella and find the beauty in gray mornings. My name is Margaret. I live in the same house I've lived in for 38 years. The rosebush still blooms every spring. My neighbor is my closest friend. I set my table each morning for one, and I do it with the good china, because I have earned the good china, and so have I. Robert always said I was the practical one. He was right. And the most practical thing I ever did was decide at 70 years old that the rest of my life was going to be spent on the people who showed up, not the ones who said they would, the ones who did.